We begin tonight with breaking news out of Winnebago County. Officials report another death related to COVID-19.
That brings the total number of deaths in Winnebago County to 8. The county is also reporting 6 new positive cases, bringing our total to 119. In northern Illinois, there are now 264 confirmed cases of COVID-19.
And while we continue to see the rise of new cases and more deaths, the rate they're increasing is slowing down.
And that is according to the governor today in his daily news conference.
The fact that our doubling rate continues to increase in every metric is a clear demonstration that there is a deceleration of virus transmission. We are, in fact, bending the curve.
The doubling rate is the length of time it takes for cases and deaths from the virus to double. The governor says on March 22nd, COVID positive cases were doubling every 2 days. Now, cases are doubling about every 8.2 days. So take a look at the chart there. See, it started to level off. At the start of April, deaths doubled every 2.5 days. Now it's every 5.5 days. And another positive update from the state. Governor Pritzker says the healthcare system is keeping up with patient needs, whether it's hospital beds or ventilators.
Today, no region is currently below 15% availability in any of these metrics. But there are individual hospitals that are operating at or near max capacity. Right now, hospitals are by and large doing a great job of directing patients amongst themselves. But if it becomes necessary, I will not hesitate to step in to direct ICU patients to hospitals that are more available.
As of today, the state announced 1,222 new COVID-19 cases and 74 deaths. That brings the total number of cases to 23,427 and the death toll to 868. 88 of Illinois' 102 counties have confirmed cases.
For essential workers diagnosed with COVID-19 in the state of Illinois, it's assumed they contracted the virus at work. Governor made that announcement yesterday for Illinois Workers' Compensation Commission. And today, unions that represent nurses and firefighters say the news is welcome. As of today, nearly 93 members of Illinois' firefighter union have COVID-19. Another 184 are in quarantine.
It's comforting to know that through this emergency amendment of the Worker Compensation Commission, that the state of Illinois will be there for us.
However, 8 Illinois employer organizations oppose the commission's move. They say the governor implemented this change without their input. The emergency rule is filed with the Secretary of State, but lawmakers can still reject it. And a new survey finds deep concern about the economy around the world. The survey asked people in 4 countries, including the U.S., a series of questions regarding the pandemic. The survey found Americans are concerned about losing their jobs. 57% said they are very concerned about that prospect. And over 1/3 of Americans surveyed worry their companies will collapse due to COVID-19 related financial challenges. And with the spread of it slowing in many parts of our country, elected leaders are trying to figure out when it is safe to let people return to work and school.
But a battle is brewing between President Trump and some governors over who will have the final say to restart the economy. NBC's Chris Pallone has more.
Across the country, a growing debate. How long should stay-at-home orders remain in place, and how soon is too soon to reopen schools and businesses?
The worst can be over, and it is over, unless we do something reckless.
With a president who appears anxious to jumpstart the economy, it's setting up a conflict between the White House and some of the nation's governors.
Science or public health, not politics, must be the guide.
After insisting the federal government is merely a backup to state efforts to fight COVID-19 and that the nation's governors are responsible for procuring their own tests, ventilators, and protective equipment, President Trump now insists he alone has the power to lift stay-at-home orders.
The President of the United States calls the shots.
But several governors disagree.
So the president doesn't have total authority.
States in 2 hard-hit parts of the country are now working together to coordinate the return to normal. California, Washington, and Oregon in the west, and in the east, 7 states have formed a regional pact, including New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey.
We cannot act on our own. Even if we give ourselves an A+, that won't be enough. This is incredibly important that we coordinate.
Experts say testing must become more widespread before restrictions are lifted, and many fear that restarting the economy too quickly will reignite the spread of coronavirus. Chris Pallone, NBC News, New York.
Meanwhile, today, President Trump met with survivors of COVID-19, saying the United States is winning its war against it. There are more than 572,000 cases across the nation, with more than 23,000 deaths. 3 potential vaccines are making fast progress in early-stage testing in China and the U.S., but it's still a long road to prove if they'll really work. Initial tests focus on safety. Researchers in both countries are trying out different doses of different types of shots. In the U.S., more than 43,000 people have recovered from COVID-19. That's almost double the number of people who died. Officials have not reported the number of recoveries in Winnebago County. In Stevenson County, 5 out of the 9 cases have recovered. The state's also surveying patients to find a recovery rate here in Illinois. It says of those who answered that survey, roughly 44% recovered after 7 days, 50% after 14, 61% after 21, and 69% after 28 days.